All right. Welcome, everyone, to our third, was it, or fourth live stream?
Third, I think.
Is it third? No, I think it's the fourth.
Oh, really?
Anyway,
Okay.
I'm Adam, and I'm here with Teen. And I think today we were just going to do an AMA of sorts. So thanks for everyone who submitted questions either on our Discord or on Twitter. YouTube comments. So, how you been?
Not bad, man. Not bad. I think I'm starting to expect that they're gonna send the back to the office memo pretty soon.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. So, yeah, my office said October. October 1st is when.
Okay. Is it like fully back, or is it going to be like part time? 1 week in the office kind of thing.
Yeah, it's still up in the air, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're going to expect people to be in the office. That's at least part time. Because now there's
right?
Now there's no expectation.
No, but what I mean is, like, do you think they're going to be like, yeah, you got to go back, a couple days out of the week, or is it like, no, you're here every day? Because I get the feeling like it's going to be this thing where I come back, maybe a couple days out of the week at most.
I think that'll be where they start, but everyone will have to do that at least.
Yeah.
A little.
What's up,
bit.
Jess?
Hey, Jess.
Hello. I'm still fiddling. Oh, like I started the cam, like, oh, it's showtime. So I turned on the camera and like, oh, this is good. This is a problem. I'm gonna have to go fix this. I
could remove you from the stream. I think there would be a revolt.
I've just been watching Doge, and my hair reflected that reality in my life.
Wait, like you've been watching The Price of Doge? Doge?
Is it Doge? Is that how you're supposed to pronounce it?
There's apparently different schools of thought on this. I'm a Doge.
Yes,
I like Doge because it has a sort of
I
French...
like Doge.
Doge?
I like Doge because I think that was a meme. It went around in Japan and they were calling it Doge. So, solidarity.
I kind of, I thought I was like you, Teen, and I'm like, it's Doge, right? But then I'm like, I heard Doge. I'm like, actually fits more into sort of the memishness, right? It sounds more like mimi.
I think I can't believe that Elon Musk is out there just openly pumping this thing and he's not in jail.
Yeah,
because like when people lose money on this, which they will, just like the Tulip Mania shit or whatever. I'm sorry, crypto fans, but that's what this is. When that happens,
you're the one who talks about this. Jail is full. Jail is full. Where are we gonna put him? There's no. It's like when we're talking about like how are we gonna afford it when we're talking about like actual like policies to help people. It's the same way with the prison. If we're talking about rich people, it's like, well, jail's full. We don't have space to put.
Well, they'll never do it. But I'm just saying the guy's crazy.
No.
Like he's just running around pumping up Doge, and telling people not to take the vaccine and stuff. Like, if this was China, man, you'd be dead.
Well. I mean that attitude has a time and a place, and I think that is profoundly American, and it's also really outdated, right? Like it should not actually matter what these single points of information do or say. Like, so I think like the whole like we're kind of chasing the tail that's wagging the dog here, and we're like, oh, we need to like cancel Joe Rogan and pull all his shit off or something. Like, no, that's just one asshole like spewing some shit. If we had a healthy baseline like society where people could take bits and pieces of that and go with it, then that's fine. But we got a country that can't do basic math. Fractions flip them out.
Well, we were getting very angry at an article about the money laundering operation that is Mattress Firm, and the NPR article where the people couldn't do basic math. They couldn't divide by 10 or multiply by 10. And yeah.
Okay, so should we get to these questions?
All right, let's get to the questions. So I collected some of the questions from Twitter, and these were they were all from the same person, and these are heavy ass questions, but we'll try to get to them. So here you go.
Is it just us three today?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I think Chris/Oxford's joining later.
Is he going to join later? Okay.
He said he's tied up until he thinks he can jump on in a bit.
Okay. We'll tackle this without him.
Yeah.
How much of an impact do you think Plan A's had on Asian American discourse? Pass. Pass. I don't know. That feels unfair because I actually asked the same, probably very unfairly, to Amanda in the last pod that I did with her.
So you asked her.
I kind of asked like, okay, you've been doing this a while. Things have changed quite a bit very quickly. Or she's such a lightning rod for idiocy, racism, misogyny, just general rank bullshit.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to know, like, do you get a general sense in any shift in response to the kind of content and the message that you're putting out? So I mean, like, as soon as I asked her, it's like, well, that's a really tough question. So try and like box it into a more localized way. Impact? Do you think Plan A has? I think shift, right, and how people respond to us, the kinds of people who are listening to the content and engaging with it. I think there's been a definite shift. How dispersed that is, I don't know. I think we had a hand in at least propagating bobo liberal. We didn't coin it, but I think just saying it so often kind of pushed that out there. We definitely helped propagate that, and that counts for something, I guess.
Probably.
It's at least creating this it. I mean, I like the term bobo liberal, and I don't even mean it as a term to like bash. I think it's a baseline kind of generic political like identity that we can all kind of like triangulate ourselves off of. It's kind of just like baseline. That it's been characterized as an emergent property of some critical number of Asian Americans in the diaspora. I think it's a good step to take. So we're not constantly just off in individual directions that are all going to be all over the place. We kind of collectively have agreed that there is some little baseline going on here. We can at least be that much of a block.
I've always thought of it not so much in terms of what our impact was, but I thought it was a pretty selfish project. As are a lot of these things that we're not the only one that did this, and I think a lot of it is selfish, not selfish, but like to serve ourselves. In the sense, and there's another question: what made you guys want to start planning Mag for? It's because of that. I think a lot of us felt this way. I'd be correct, and Adam and Jess correct. Tell me if you agree. But like when I first went looking for Asian American, content, it was just very frustrating to see what I was seeing. And it was very personally frustrating because it's like, you feel like people are speaking for you, especially when they tackle things like race and racial identity. And the thing about that is like, especially with Asian American studies being a thing, they've sort of professionalized your identity, right? Yeah. And there is an academia, there's a group of people, and then there's an activist class, and then there's these different factions of groups that have a kind of middling influence, right? That is kind of frustrating because they are claiming specialized knowledge of your identity. And so it feels like someone is out there speaking for you or about you, and you don't get a say in it. And I felt like
substrate for something else. Yeah,
you're substrate like for something else.
Yeah.
And when you try and speak up about it, and I noticed this online when people were trying to say, actually, there's a lot. My experience as a young man, or my experience as a young woman, doesn't track really what is being said out there, like say in the textbooks or in the papers or whatever in the academic world, or it's not tracking what the activists are saying or whatever. They shut you down. They tell you to shut the fuck up.
Because again, you're supposed to be the base. A lot of it is about delivering a voting block, I think, for people who are more politically minded. And so for all this talk of like Asian is not a monolith, this activist and intellectual class has to actually flatten you down to be able to characterize you, to simplify you, and then deliver you as a little like sacrifice on the altar of, I don't know, assimilation or social advancement or just plain fucking money.
Yeah, from that perspective, I'd agree with that.
So there's always that downward pressure to like and it's so perverse because they're the ones who will use words like we need to be nuanced and Asians are not a monolith and be very specific. But if you look at the emergent property of what they're actually saying, they're saying no, you have to be the simplified block, because that's the place I need you to be at. Like I think we noticed this. Like Teen, you called this out. What was it? Was it the Hmong cop who was
right,
the lookout
Tao.
for Derek
that was
Chauvin?
Yeah.
So that it shows up in shit like that, right? So for the longest time, they're talking about like Asians are not a monolith. We need to segment this out and talk about. We need to talk about East Asian privilege or all the different segmentations. But when it came to that, then suddenly all of the blue check crowd came out of the woodwork to condemn this just Asian man.
Right.
So that's I think that was a perfect encapsulation of just how sinister that entire project is. Like I'd actually even prefer I think it's a model from a previous time where to ascend you actually had to dissociate. Now it's like you can only advance by claiming ownership or leadership of your block, your identity block. That's sinister to me. Like I mean, when I'm talking about like there's a different model, I'm thinking like I was reading a pretty interesting book about mixed race children in Jamaica in the time of like British colonization. And so they were in a pretty tough spot, and at various points in that history, their way to advance further was to actually to like shed being black and just claim to be white, right? And that was their entree into the higher tiers of British society. Now we have the inverse. You almost get that assimilation by it's pretending to embrace your identity here. You have to pretend to be a representative of it, to really love it, claim it, be claimed by it, and therefore to be a subject matter expert on said community in order to get advanced further and further up.
Yeah, you have to compete to be like one of the loved children.
I was gonna say you're the expert, right? You're the instead of separating that or not being that other side, you're the exceptional example.
Yeah, and that's they treat and I think they kind of treat us, people
like the
who
talented
aren't
tenth,
in
right?
that
I think
class,
that's
as like the way like a shepherd would treat his flock, right? Every time there is an opportunity for nuance or an actual complicated situation, they kind of have to like take that stick and like jab us back in line. Like, no, you're getting a little out of line.
Is that what they use those sticks for?
No, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to whack the sheep. Not that I know jack about sheep, but like the idea is to like you kind of corral, you herd your flock, and you guide it, and you take ownership of it. You take care of it. I think they really do see that role for themselves, self-appointed, of course. And this is why they end up just like when a complicated situation occurs, they spend most of their time bringing people in line. They're just yelling at people. They're not actually solving shit. So in terms of bringing it way back to the actual question, I don't know about like how big of an impact, but if we have helped, because I think part of the pod was just voicing these frustrations over and over again, thinking about it like a little bit differently each time. If we've helped anybody to start to unpack the problems that they're seeing, because I don't think anyone's coming to us like I don't want to take credit for like solving anything, but I think people come find us when they already have a feeling that something is wrong. So
I'd agree with that.
If we've helped kind of like think through problems more in depth than maybe they're seeing elsewhere, then I think we've done our job. And this isn't as like a theorizing about a population. This just came out of us kind of hashing. We were doing this for free, silently.
We were
just
pretty
letting
much
it
free
go fall
for.
into the ether.
Yeah, like we didn't start the Patreon.
No, I'm talking about like
for,
before we even started to record this stuff.
Oh, that too, yeah.
We were just a bunch of basically strangers who were all kind of sensing the same thing. We had deep differences too, of course, and just kind of hashing that out a little bit at a time. And it's just maybe a product of our narcissism that we're like, hey, maybe this will help other people. I can't just let all this genius.
I know we can't
disappear
just
into
let
the
it.
ether.
Yeah. All right. So and then the
It
next
can't just be
question is
between
sort
us
of,
and whatever mole at the NSA is embedded into our Slack
Right.
channels. Come on.
Right. So so the next question is sort of related to that, I guess. The first question is, what do you think the Asian American landscape would look like if Plan A hadn't been founded? And I mean, this is another,
really
I think, hard question. Yeah.
This is really flattering.
It is very flattering.
I don't think there would be any difference.
Yeah, I don't. I
I
honestly
think so.
don't know if it would be much different. Like Teen and Jess are saying, like we've had an impact.
It's small.
You know, we've helped to popularize certain terms. I at least from my personal perspective, I hope that I was able to introduce certain issues with adoption to a wider Asian American audience. But do I think our impact has been so large that if we hadn't existed, Asian America as we know it would be recognizably different? I don't know.
I don't think we've ever tried to change anything in that sense, right? Like I don't think our goal is influence or even changing things. I think it's more and this was my frustration going online again, was the lack of I might be getting ahead of ourselves here, but the lack of intellectual culture among Asian Americans. We are very academic oriented, and we have a lot of smart people, and we have a lot of smart people in intellectual fields. But there wasn't anything that seemed to me to be, or much of it, that was Asian American thought. Like that didn't mean anything to me. You know what I mean? Like there were Asian Americans who were doing interesting shit in interesting fields, in the humanities or in STEM or whatever. But there didn't seem like, and in talking with someone like Trevor over at Champagne Sharks, who I think was one of the biggest influences on us, was just like seeing a black guy in America just thinking through his situation and not relying on rails, rail guards that were put up for him. And you go online, and that was the one place where I felt that people were trying to do that, even if it was not always well organized, and sometimes it was very counterproductive, and sometimes just downright stupid. But people were trying to, think through their personal experiences and understand the world in a way that was consistent with what they personally saw, rather than just being, taught like, oh, this is what's really going on, and if you don't see this, if this doesn't fit what you're experiencing in life, it's because you're not looking at things correctly, right? And I think that's what I think a lot of us, the seven of us, probably have that in common. Was the sort of like dissatisfaction with the kinds of explanations that people were giving for what was going on, because it's not like all this stuff around like say cultural appropriation, or all this stuff around interracial relationships, or all this stuff around media rep, and all this stuff around China and like none of it. If it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for people, not people like us with respect to the audience, but for me personally, knowing that you all and engaging in conversations about it all the time for years, I think the question is, for me, would be interpreted as, what would I feel like if I had not done this project with you all? Where would I be personally?
Yeah.
And I think I would be much more lost, because the kinds of shit that have been thrown our way as Asian people in America is a lot to deal with if you think about it. It's like a lot to digest, You know what I mean? Hey, what's up, John?
Hey.
So that's if I found I would repose the question that way. Is like for me personally, what would it have been like if we had never tried to do something together online? And I think I would be quite lost. You know.
And sorry, just as an
2020 would
aside
have been
here.
so much harder.
Sorry, as a.
Yeah.
So we'll try to do the timestamps. We tend to have longer streams, so it does take a bit of time to listen through and segment them, but we'll try to do that for you guys. All right. Sorry, go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, I was really grateful that we had done that because I think 2020 would have been a lot harder to process if we hadn't had some amount of critical thinking done beforehand. Because we were kind of all seeing the signs in the water. And we were just, we hadn't been quite validated yet, but we were definitely seeing it and thinking through it and kind of, I guess, preparing. So when a lot of stuff kind of came home to roost last year, it wasn't so hard to kind of mentally navigate around that. Like it was, I get the feeling that it kind of hit a lot of people suddenly, like they were not prepared for it. And I'm talking about like our Asian American politicians, where last year, be like like Mark Takano or Judy Chu or something, like every damn week they'd be on Twitter being like, I'm so shocked, this is not America, like how could like you're saying this every week. At some point, you're gonna have to like connect some fucking dots.
I saw Grace Meng, my rep, in tears after the I think there was a House committee hearing on anti-Asian violence, and one of the Republicans, I forgot who, not Hawley, but one of these guys, was going on about how, as bad as it is, China is a bunch of Nazis and all this stuff. And it was just like, I could kind of sympathize. It was just like, what the fuck is going on? This is insane. But Adam, do you remember like years ago, you and I went to dinner with like a friend of mine, and I won't say his name, but he's in the advertising industry.
Yeah, I remember.
And this is the kind of when we like had first started Plan A, and he was like really interested in what we were doing and stuff.
Yeah.
And he wanted to know kind of like what was the online culture and all this stuff. So we went to go have dinner with him, and we ended up just scaring the shit out of him because we were like, "Yo!" And this is years ago. This is actually, I think, before Trump was it? No. This was after Trump was elected, but this was kind of in because we had already started Plan A.
Yeah.
And so we were telling him basically like, over dinner in K-Town. We were like...
Yeah, because this was not the first time we've had dinner with him. It was like the second time or third time we've had dinner with him, right?
Yeah, and we were explaining to him, we were like, based on everything that we have talked about with people and everything that we've learned and stuff, it's like, it is going to be a very, very bad time for Asian Americans very soon.
Yeah, and this was probably like 2018 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Because it was well before COVID or anything, but it was after... Trump was elected. Yeah,
it was a while ago, and actually, it might have been before Plan A, actually, and it might have been before. And
either way,
he walked away from that dinner just going like, "Wow, you guys have given me a lot to think about," because what you're saying is very disturbing to me, and he's a kid and everything. Yeah, but I'm not sure I think he was disturbed for that night, right? Because we were making a fairly convincing case that there was a lot of shit that was heading our way that would take, that we would start to understand the nature of it more clearly and the way it sort of might track something like anti-Semitism and a sort of like purge and a yellow peril, the return of a yellow peril kind of thing. And I was like, I think this was coming from like, the stuff we would chat about in our Discord, or in our Slack at that time, if you all remember.
That's right. We used Slack, and then we became.
Yeah, we were in a Slack, all of us.
We became gamers and just went to Discord. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, and I think like the past few years have definitely validated the alarm, which just a few years ago might have seemed a little bit
paranoid.
Yeah, but fuck, it happened, and it was it's worse than I imagined.
Yeah. You're not paranoid if you're right? You're not paranoid if they're actually after you. But, I think Robot Roller makes a good point. And this is because we can't just flatter our own egos to think that like, oh yeah, plan A is like vital. If we went away, everyone would be lost. Like, it's probably true. Another podcast or publication would have come up to a place where we are, and there are plenty that came after us too, and
there's
during
plenty.
us, and there are a lot of people, right? I mean, so
I think we're one of the smaller ones, actually.
Probably.
Probably.
We scare a lot of people, but yeah, we're.
Do we?
So I mean, we've made some lists that were sketchy. It sort of.
Yeah.
So sort of maybe an aside, but how much Doge did you buy, Jess?
She doesn't want to answer.
You have to unmute.
Oh.
Yeah, that's between me and Elon Musk.
Yes. So she bought a lot. Okay.
Wow.
It's been around for a little while. So I remember the first stash that I got was a long time ago, just because it was like hey, whoa, weird. Okay, it's like pegged on absolutely nothing, and it's called Dogecoin. Cool.
Why not? He's on a little rocket going off to space, right?
Yeah, and then like since February, it's like well, how can you ignore it now? So not enough that I can't just be like fuck all y'all and bounce. I'm still here. Not at like.
I thought you were gonna buy us. I thought you were gonna make enough money so we could get our own Plan A commune island somewhere. I mean, that's the goal, right?
That is the goal. So all y'all better not be talking shit on Doge now. Okay, so team, you better hush your mouth. All right, if you want your piece of that island, okay. So I guess for me, one thing that I found validating about doing this is maybe it doesn't come across so much on the pods, but there was a lot of personal work that we had to do as team members, and this might be something that like whatever you're hearing on the pod, like any like the rapport or any kind of like personal like whatever you're hearing on the pod is forged through a ton of personal engagement with each other.
Yeah.
So, and I thought that was something that was sorely lacking, especially in more like public-facing forums, like social media, like Reddit or Facebook or Twitter, where I thought everything was kind of couched on consensus building. As in, we have a set kind of thing going on. If you are, unorthodox, if you step outside these bounds that we've collectively created, you're out of the club. Like, this breeds a dangerous and pretty toxic situation because you're supposed to agree. That's a pretty intellectually incestuous and stifling thing. And we've all seen how it can spiral into really bad toxicity. So I thought it was a really good exercise that all of us, and we're all very different people. We
have different backgrounds, everything.
All different people. I valued how much disagreeing we did because we all came from different places. We still aren't in agreement on it. We don't have the same politics necessarily, the same beliefs on things. But it was like, well, I thought it was a little defeat. Like these public-facing forums, they would kind of present themselves as kind of activist circles, right? Like we're trying to build solidarity and bring liberation to the people, or something like we're trying to build a front here. And like how are you trying to build a coalition when you're trying to kick people out every goddamn hour, basically? How does this work? If you want to actually be in coalition or to build some kind of, you have to, it's more important to be able to bridge disagreement than cultivate consensus.
We're the Asian American online blockchain is what we are, Jess. That's right. That's right. Mutual peer-to-peer trust network, decentralized.
Yeah, exactly. No,
hard to boot up.
Proof of work,
but hard to boot up. But once you get it going, it's pretty stable.
Yeah.
Well, and Jong will always have a place for the appeals.
Jong is, this is okay. So like as an example, to get that shit going, for example,
just kidding.
to win Jong's trust, I actually had to fucking fly to California, and Jong's got me all sorts of marijuanas that I'm not familiar with that were endemic to the West Coast, and was like, just smoke them. And then he just observed me. He was like, I need to see you flat on your ass, and then I need to observe you for a little while to see. Because it's true, on the internet, you talk to people, but you need to, if you're going to actually do something together, commit some time and effort into a project, you do need to know each other. You can't just fucking go based on a few posts on
right.
Reddit. And this is the problem with Reddit, was these mods on a place like Asian Identity, they don't know each other really. They've never met each other. A lot of them still question whether the other people are
Person
real.
is real.
Yeah. So how can you have a project where you don't even know if those other people are real?
Dude, it reminds me of when we actually had this like tete-a-tete with Asian America, right? The Asian American mods, right? And it was like me, you, and my girlfriend, now wife at the time, Teen, and another friend of ours, Jackie. And we met like a couple of the mods of Asian American and like other people involved at this bar.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like this standoff. Like it was this like very weird standoff. Remember that?
Yeah. It was like
And,
that
like-
scene out of Anchorman where the different channels show up. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it, you know, and I had known you maybe for a year or two, but it's not like I knew you as well as I know you now, right? It's not like I've known you for, we were childhood friends. But I got the sense that like some of those people who supposedly had known each other for a really long time had just met each other that night.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just the weirdest thing. But John, like, how do you feel about this whole project? Like, so some of the questions were about like the impact that we've had. What would the landscape look like? What are your thoughts?
I'd love to take credit for it.
That's the right answer.
we are.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly,
John, you're more plugged into the rest of the online space than like I am for sure. Like you circulate more than I do.
I think,
Just generally speaking, in real life too.
Yeah, I think we've been able to push the needle a bit. Yeah, I'll answer that in a second. I think we've been able to push the needle a little bit. I don't know if it's necessary, like I can't say like we were the origin or that we were, single-handedly responsible for ideas reaching the mainstream. That's on everybody collectively having discussions and talking about it and sharing it and disseminating these ideas. And it doesn't really matter where it came from. But within people I know, within people I talk to, among people I talk to, yeah, definitely, we have had an influence, undoubtedly. I mean, I think I might have shared this on one of like the random pods, but I had the pleasure of running into somebody that was telling me about Escape from Planet.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
With my
Those
friend's birthday
fucking
party.
morons over. They were stupid. It was
No,
so
it was.
dumb. Yeah.
It wasn't like that at all. It was awesome. We like, it was this big birthday party. We were at like a Korean barbecue restaurant, and I was introduced to this guy.
Perfect party then.
It was a great party.
Yeah.
And we started talking. We started talking about like current events, and then we started talking about Asian issues, right? Asian American issues. And he was like, "Oh, dude, I gotta tell you about this podcast that I started listening to. It's called Escape from Planet A. And like, there's these guys on there. They're great. Like, they got some really good insights. And I'm just like, oh my god, have I got fucking news for you, buddy?"
Did you just like break out into a big
you play it
grin and sort of
cool?
try to play it cool for a bit?
I showed him the Planet A Discord. I was
Nice.
like, oh yeah, because
Oh yeah, what do you?
Is he in it?
do you know
Is
about
he
this
in
yet? He might be. I don't think so.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know.
All right.
Maybe.
Cool.
So yeah, so definitely, I think we can.
What were
say
his
confidently-
reasons for telling you, that he liked it?
Let's see. This was
Probably a few years ago, right?
This is pre-COVID.
Like,
This
bro,
is a
you're
couple years
fucked
ago.
up. You might need these guys to straighten you out a little. Like, you need
It
help.
was
man.
probably
Yeah.
because we were talking. I don't remember what exactly, Teen. Sorry, but it was probably in the context of something that had like come up, right, in the course
Probably
of the
something,
discussion, and
yeah.
I probably mentioned something that we had talked about that maybe somebody had mentioned on a pod that he listened to, and so a connection was drawn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so probably we just touched on the same thing, and it was like, oh, we're on the same page, and funny enough.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was like the Brooklyn Hammer episode where we talked about that.
Would you?
It could.
Would
have
you
been.
guys agree that? I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, why? What? Because people are like, oh, you gotta. If someone says that, I'm not really sure what that means or why. I am still honestly confused as to why
About
this
what?
interests anybody.
About why they might be a fan? Like you'd be wondering.
I'm curious
like,
what it is. I'm
why.
curious what it is we're even doing.
I
don't know what drives it, and I think about this, and I sometimes wonder if we have like right wing feelings, like right wing chud spirit, but like a sort of more left wing brain. Like
it's possible.
Meaning, and I think that what I mean is like, that I think the thing that really is missing in a lot of the Asian American stuff that I see, that I find responsible, like they're giving good answers to stuff, like they're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But they still fundamentally just don't sympathize with the anger and frustration of people. It's still fundamentally a disciplinarian, do the right thing, what the fuck is wrong with you kind of thing. Where, where they're looking for swaths of people to dismiss, be it chuds, incels, tankies, whatever group du jour that you're not allowed to sympathize with. And I think the difference, at least for me, in terms of why I think we've been able to at least do things a little bit differently from some of the other projects, is that it's not that I sympathize with these people. I'm like, I am these people. I am the person that gets mad about that shit. I'm not going to pretend. And I think that's the thing that is pretty bullshit about a lot of what people do, is they're trying to pretend like they don't get it. But we know as well as anyone, because we've talked to a lot of these people behind the scenes, they fully get it, because that's who they are too. And I think there's a lot of denialism about that, which is why when it came to the big topics that everyone couldn't really wrap their little podcast around or their little project around, it was because they never took a first-person view into it. They always othered it. Like, for example, all the stuff about the interracial relationship stuff. Everyone, whoever even wanted to talk about it, usually sort of put it at arm's length or whatever, and kind of held it up and being like, oh, there's this toxic conversation going on. I don't get it, but here, let's go into it. And then we knew the reality was, no, you all are obsessed with this shit. You won't stop talking about it, but you're pretending like you're on the outside.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was dating related at all. I don't think that came up. But
you mean with the dude at the
that
barbecue?
guy? Yeah, at the barbecue. But I think for him, what the appeal was that we were willing to take a stand outside of the box, right? Like, we were willing to say, like, okay, these are things that make sense to us, but these are things that don't make sense to us. And instead of kind of just going along with the party line and saying, yep, we co-sign this message and everything they say is true, and we agree with. No, we were willing to voice our disagreement. And I think that's the primary thing that stood out to him. And, I mean, I think genuinely, we come up with insights and different ways to look at it. It's not all about, and I think you do a good job of this, team, is like, it's not all about like, what are the facts, what is like the historical narrative. It's also like, how are you choosing to look at it, right? Not choosing as in like, oh, I'm going to be an optimist and I'm going to be a cynic. Choosing in terms of like, what angle are you going to look at it? If you're only ever looking at it from one angle, you can only see it a certain way. But if you kind of take it up, pick it up, toss it around, look around, turn it in your hands, you might see something new out of that and realize that the situation might be a little bit different, or maybe even radically different than what you thought it was before.
This was doubly true for the Adoptee discourse, I think, Adam, where there was this, not only are we talking about Asian Americans, but we're talking about adoptees who have this additional burden of being thankful for having been granted the the privilege of growing up in an American family, of having been saved from a terrible alternate timeline in your home country, and all this stuff. And it seems
the horrible
that
wasteland of what, Daegu? You're from Daegu, right?
No, and Name.
Name. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The terrible idyllic, I know, and poor, but terrible idyllic island of Name.
Yeah. But I mean,
And
you
in the
know
terrible
what I mean. Like,
dystopian
and when we
country of
first
South
started
Korea.
talking, and you were talking about the adoptee stuff, I mean, I was like, I'm not sure that everyone's going to necessarily get passionate about legislative developments within that field.
Sure, absolutely,
Though they're important. Though they're important.
Yeah.
I always felt like, yes, that's true. Like, maybe they won't fully get activated about the Dreamers or any sort of like reform to the naturalization laws, things like that. But when it came to the social expectations of Asian transracial adoptees,
Yeah.
and the idea that you are someone who's you have a preset job, your obligation to be thankful for who you are and what you were given.
I still have to finish that series of articles, but yeah, the gratitude, right?
Yeah, I think that was something that was heavily relatable by most Asian Americans who are not adoptees.
Yeah,
Because in a way, you are adopted by the larger society around you. It's a different level at which you draw that boundary. And for transracial adoptees, it seems it's drawn inside the house rather than outside of it. But that boundary exists for second gen, and I felt a lot of things were quite relatable.
Yeah,
It was more like it's realizing that the issues that the adoptees face are at the extreme end, but of a spectrum that we're all on.
Right.
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 And I think one element of more mainstreamed academic discourse is the tendency to atomize issues, probably for political expediency or the nature of having some kind of material impact. Right, you have to simplify it and
to
really
find their
focus
place in the
yourself.
academy. You have to find your niche, and that pushes
or
people
even just
to
as a
atomize.
like if your goal is to promote awareness or something, you have to keep it very simple. The downside to that then is it looks like they're completely separate issues, that they're completely siloed,
Right.
and never can the twain meet. You can, but that's not what we're doing. We're not activists. We're not pushing for any particular material goal. So I think what we're good at is kind of saying, well, let's take a look at what the issues that adoptees face. And then once we start talking about that, we're going to realize we all relate to it in some way,
Right.
shape, or form. This is a relatable experience. Like, there is no reason to not include that or to treat it as some kind of like, it deserves that separate attention, of course, when it does come to, like, getting a bill signed or legislation or all of that stuff.
Right,
But
right.
when we're talking about it as a social phenomenon, there's absolutely no reason to keep it isolated like that. This is an Asian American diasporic experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it should be discussed as such, and we all learn from that.
Yeah.
So,
and
like, that was one tendency that I wanted to pull back from, and I think, and I'm really happy that we did, because we're not activists and none of us
Right.
are doing this. None of us make our living off of this. We've been pretty explicit about holding back on that, and I think this gives us a lot more room to disagree, and it gives us a lot more room to be a little bit more wide ranging in how we want to make links between subjects.
Right.
That we want to talk
Right.
about.
Yeah, and I think it really did. Yeah, like the more we talked about it, all of us, and the more I've interacted with our patrons and just other people about it through Plan A, I realized, like you did, Teen, that it and you, Jess, like you just said, that like it all related to one another. We could all sort of take parts of it and say, yeah, that even though it might seem very different because I was raised in a white family and things like that, oh no, we 2Gs and other Asian diaspora can relate to it. There are elements to it, and then I also think that that helps the adoptees as well feel like, oh, you know what, we don't have to feel like we're so different. Like we don't. I hopefully through this dialogue and through just learning about each other, and that we're not just completely separate experiences, people could feel like, oh, I do have a place. And I think I know we tend to like poo-poo a lot of that stuff, but for some people that means a lot. And hopefully our conversations and just us talking about it has helped people feel like they can sort of step into the Asian American community and say, I am Asian American. I am Korean. I am Chinese American, Vietnamese, wherever you were adopted from. And I appreciate everything that I've been able to do through the magazine through that. So, yeah.
Cool.
Hey,
We had a
somebody.
question asking Jong about his background.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah.
What was what were you asking, by the way? Like, what exactly? Like, are you
Someone
asking,
thinks
like,
you're hot and they want to know more about you.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think that's it.
No, they want to know.
About your
They said we should use Jong simply for the appeals.
Yeah, that's right.
How did you get
How'd you get
involved?
involved? Yeah, so background and how'd you get involved?
Okay, so I'm Korean. I don't know if that's the background. Second generation Korean, from California, the Bay Area. I got involved with Planet. Let's see. So, I mean, Planet was just like, we just kind of all just found each other. Well, like we found each, like, so Teen, you and Jess were talking with each other, and like, and then I think I met Philip, and then you, Adam. I think Adam, might have met you through Teen.
Well,
I'm
I
not
knew
sure.
like Al and all those guys because I was doing that TFML pod with
Right,
them.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was on a few of those.
Yeah.
And then
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know, my involvement, how did I get involved? I just knew a lot of people. Like I was talking to, like, I guess I was like online friends with mods from Asian identity, from Asian masculinity, and like I just met a lot of people and connected with people, and I was kind of like, this is really dumb. This is like a dumb feud. The feud is dumb, like some of the attitudes are dumb, some of the people are dumb. But what I did note was that at a minimum, I would meet individuals that I was like, okay, they're cool, and they've got some interesting ideas, or they've got a brain on their head, and I'm interested in talking to them. And more so, I want them to get into contact with this person.
Right. Right.
And so that's kind of what I was about, and I was hoping in the process that, like, okay, maybe we can move past it. Like, if we can get a critical mass of people that are on the same page, we can kind of move past this bullshit or whatever. It wasn't a fully fleshed out idea. I was just
you've always been the consensus builder guy.
I don't know about consensus builder.
Or you're
but I
trying
try
to
to
get
connect
people
them.
to not
He's a
just
connector.
fight and.
I try and
He's a
get
connector.
people to connect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, you two might benefit from knowing each other.
Yeah.
Like,
That's hard to
here
do,
you go.
Yeah, and that's
It
an
is hard.
important
especially
thing.
online.
It's
'cause
an important role.
Nobody trusts each other online
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
And eventually I ended up making friends with one of the mods of Asian feminism, who then invited me into this, like, kind of our Asian feminism kind of adjacent space that's also supposed to be equal on gender lines. So equal number of men and women participating. And it was supposed to be that kind of space. And that's where I met Chris. And then after talking with Chris, kind of one of the hurdles I tried to get past was like, oh, I think Teen, he knew that you were doing things with Al, so he like immediately wrote you off because you were like even tangentially related.
Chris did?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was like, no, you like, look, give this guy a chance. Like, he's not that kind of idiot. Like, right?
Surprise!
And,
No, I'm kidding.
and in that way, right, we just kind of connected people, and in that process, I kind of became connected with you guys too. And then that's when we formed that chat room, and then just started talking, and then we were like, yo, like, why don't we start putting what we have out into the world, like what we're already talking about into the world, because why not? We're not finding anything better, so let's give it a shot. And if we make it a year, we make it a year, and we've made it 3 years, almost 4, right? Or maybe even 4. I think,
Crazy.
in a couple
2
months.
administrations so far.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's basically how I got involved. I don't do much writing. I've been on a couple podcasts. I do a lot of chatting, although not so much this last month.
You're our like CTO.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
You're
I guess so,
responsible
yeah.
for our
You put
website,
together-
basically. The website looks the way it does because of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
the
you-
medium to
John-
go
John's
switch
our
was a
guy.
lot of work. So don't that was
And we got to find a way to boost this again. But John made some killer Spotify playlists that I still listen
Yeah.
to this day.
Oh my
Fuck yeah,
God.
Friday.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you?
Great
Oh,
artists
sweet.
do that,
Thanks.
Yeah, they're awesome.
So
The best. It's like
I mean,
the
we're on
the
Spotify.
best
The pod's on Spotify.
Asian
Spice.
American
Find it.
compendium. Like
Yeah.
it's all Asian American artists, right?
It's all. It's actually Asian diaspora. I tried to get.
Asian
tried
diaspora.
to keep
Sorry,
it
Asian
international.
diaspora.
Yeah,
Yes,
one of the things
yes.
I was trying to do was break out of a U.S. centric, like musical landscape. The whole project was me taking inspiration from a guy that I met in one of these chat rooms. He was like, "Yo, you want to learn a language? Like listen to the music, right? And like sing the songs in the language." And I think the logic was something like you have a easier time like learning the pronunciation or things like that because there's a tone and melody to follow. Anyway, I was just like, yo, I'm gonna get on board the immersion train. Yeah.
The playlists that you put together are pretty heavy on hip hop and some.
It's like all hip hop.
It's almost all hip hop, right? Is that because you think Asian diaspora is much more hip hop inflected, or is it because you just don't care about Asian diaspora indie bands and Christian rock and things like that?
It's not that I don't care about it. But it is. Yeah. So what I'm saying is like, it's born out of my own interest.
Right.
I was like doing this immersion thing, and at the time, I was kind of like, I only really. I just hadn't examined my assumption that Korean music was all either like traditional Korean music that my parents listened to or K-pop, which I'm not a huge K-pop fan. Don't cancel me.
I'm not either. Don't cancel me either.
But
don't worry, BTS will survive without you.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Though I totally support them.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, what am I into? What do I want to listen to? So I was like, okay, like hip hop, rap, and like when I checked out Korean rap when I was like going over there as a child, it was not nearly as good or as interesting as it is now. So I was very pleasantly blown away, and then so I decided to turn that into a weekly playlist for Plan A.
Yeah.
And wanted to expand it outside of just Korean music, okay, because that wouldn't be, And so I'd like tried to get like Vietnamese artists in there, Chinese artists in there, Japanese artists, like. Those were the three easiest for me to access, just because they would do a lot of collaborations with each other and stuff. I don't know what happened to Jess, but
I'll let her back in when she comes back. Yeah. She tends to have network issues.
Yeah, but I mean that's I could talk about the playlist later, or but
yeah,
it was fun. Did it for a year. 52 playlists.
It's a lot of work though. I mean, it was a sad day when John was like, I got to tap out, but we'll try to put links to it and stuff in the notes later on so that you guys can find it. It should be on our website too. If you go to planetmag.com and search for Fuck Yeah Fridays, you should find the articles section that have links. Yeah.
Yeah. And if not, there's a Spotify account, a Plan A Spotify account that has these playlists too. Spotify is not happy about people using their content like that. So they break the links. So every now and then you got to go.
I just went to one just now and the link was broken, but
the playlists are still up.
The playlist should still be there, but I think the link to it on the article was broken. But maybe we'll try to put more of a general link there. But there was another question. I think. Do your career/day jobs relate to this podcast? I'll start. I'll say not really. I am not in the broadcasting or marketing or advertising or academic fields at all. So for me, it does not.
Mine doesn't either. I'm a lawyer, and that makes me think about things from the perspective of that, but it doesn't have anything to do with this at all. Corporate.
Yeah. Relating to the podcast is in like what, like being on the podcast or producing the podcast or.
No, I mean like I think it means like
anyway.
Do we derive any professional? Are we like professionally adjacent to what we do in this field? We're all regular job people.
Pretty much. I currently work as a software engineer. I don't think helping produce a podcast is part of that at all. Some of the the tech stuff on the background, maybe. But and then before that I was working as a lighting technician in Rigor, so no, I don't think that's that related. And then who else? I mean, is there anybody that I don't think anybody in Plenty.
No, I don't think anyone directly has like industry knowledge that would sort of point to You know,
I've got a hard hitting question, a substantive one.
I don't even understand that question, team.
Do you see it in the private chat?
yeah, well,
I didn't
it.
even understand.
This is actually kind of an interesting question.
It's too long. I can't
it's
make
too
a
long.
banner out of it.
Okay, I could summarize the question.
I'm gonna put it in the comments.
Okay.
And then I'll. Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So this question, don't worry about the question. You don't have to read the question. I can summarize it for you. So the question is about something that I think I wrote in my Substack about. Is it a privilege to not be murdered by the cops? And the reason I was writing this is because I feel like this privilege discourse is this liberal shit that I fucking hate. And the reason I hate it is because you end up with people, Asian Americans, liberals, saying stuff like, we have to recognize our privilege when it comes to the fact that we don't get harassed or killed by the police. That's our privilege. And I was saying that I think that's a very strange thing to say, because I don't think that's a privilege. I think that's a right. That I shouldn't be thankful for not being killed by the police. I should assume that I won't be. I don't think I have to feel thankful for that. And what's the difference? And the difference, I think, is that what an Asian liberal is saying when they say we have to check our privilege or recognize our privilege. What we're saying is, like, the system works for us. It just doesn't work for black people. So what we need to do is reform the system so it works for them as well as it works for us. And that's a trap. The trap is that the police that's not why the police exist. The police is specifically existing to separate out, the part of society that enjoys the, quote, privilege and the society that needs to be suppressed. They're the line. They're the thin blue line, but it's between those one side of society and the other. And so the liberal delusion is to think, oh, as long as I'm thankful about being on my side of that divide, then then it's enough for me to say, oh, I wish those poor black people could be over here with me, right? That's the sort of patriarchal. Paternalistic outlook of the Asian liberal. So this quote is to say, so what I said was we should return to a different notion of the police, which is that the police don't have a responsibility to me as an individual. It's not my privilege to not be killed by the cops. It's that society has it's that police have a contract with the whole of society. And when they kill someone, when they kill a young black man or a young black woman, and should not be seen as a crime against black people per se. It is, but that's not the limit of it. It is a violation of their contract with society as a whole. And so we can't think of it as privilege. We have to think about that is a sort of a disqualifying thing altogether, which is why abolition is, to me, not a fringe or radical idea. The police in Minneapolis violated not the rights of a black man, they did, but that's not it.
Not only,
right? They didn't just violate their, the rights of black people. They violated the terms by which they were granted the right to be police in the first place. Right. Altogether, their entire contract should be void for that. So that's what I was saying by this, return to a Rawlsian notion, to say the idea of the Rawlsian notion is to say, I don't view myself as being any particular person in society. I have to think of myself as sort of a blended mix of everyone. That, the potential, the way you analyze things is through what you call the veil of ignorance, is to say, I'm sort of everyone all at the same time. And so that is my point. I don't think it's antithetical. I don't think that means colorblind at all. I think that means that as an Asian person, you can't be colorblind. That you have to consider that the experience of black people with respect to police is a universal sort of experience in its own way, because we're all part of the same society that has collectively granted a monopoly to the police.
Yeah.
On violence.
But you're going to run into a lot of problems with that wording, team. You're going to run into a lot, like, I mean, that's.
But
I know
that's why.
what
But
you're
see
pushing.
that. But
That's
I
your
think that's
point.
what people should do. I think you should get yourself into trouble with wording so that you can dig your way out of your own hole, so that people will actually listen. Right? Because I think if people don't set themselves up to do, no one's going to give a shit. Like what you want to do in a way, I think, if you want to be somewhat, if you want to get your point across, I think you have to sort of like almost bait people into thinking that you're saying something that you're not.
Sure. I've heard that
Yeah.
logic before.
Yeah.
Hey,
Anyway,
man.
that's how I think it works
I
on
mean,
the air. Because if you just say what everyone else is saying, nobody gives a shit. You kind of have to look like you're advocating for some terrible position, and realize that you're actually coming up to the left of what most people, these fucking Asian shitlibs, are saying. Because think about what they're saying. They're basically saying it works for me. I'm going to give a little bit of money, and I'm going to say a little nice thing to hope that you could one day be in my position. And it's like, no, because you're not thinking in a Rawlsian sense. You already are in that position. You just don't give a shit. That's the Rawlsian approach, is to say, okay, well, you don't think you're in that position because you're not thinking in those terms. You're just thinking about your goddamn self. So, anyway, all right, enough of that.
Well, so let's see. What are your thoughts and opinion on the Belt and Road Initiative? Think it might inspire a pan-Asian movement overseas?
I don't have much to say on BRI other than I think that the Americans are turning this. I think that the idea of thinking about this as the Chinese, I think a lot of people are saying this these days, is like, as bad as America is, I agree we violate a lot of human rights around the world, that U.S. hegemony is a terrible thing. However, Chinese hegemony would be even worse. Is a very useful notion for people who want to sort of like excuse what the United States is doing. It's like, yeah, it's bad, but I mean, it's an abusive thing. I mean, that's kind of like what abusive guys would say to like a woman, right? Is like, okay, yeah, I might hit you, I might insult you, I might make you feel like shit, but the next guy will treat you even worse.
Right.
I think that's what's been going on a lot with this China shit.
Good.
Yeah, like, yeah, we're a terrible fucking country, but come on, the fucking chinks, are you serious? Come on, you're gonna throw in with me, you know? The Mearsheimer was doing that in Australia. If you saw that famous video or clip where he was like humiliating Australians to their faces, saying like, at the end of the day, you're gonna choose us because the other option is to go with China, and you really don't want to do that. So you're gonna take it from us.
It's very mob mentality as well. Right?
Yeah, it's very mobbed. It's
like,
very abusive. It's very disgusting.
I might come and take half your profit, but you know the next gang they're gonna take 80.
Yeah.
So you might as well be loyal to us, right?
Yeah.
Whether true or not, it's a filthy tactic.
Yeah.
And you know, in terms of like the initiative itself, you know, I mean, does me having an opinion mean anything? I'm not in those countries. You know, China's going to do what they want. I can have some sort of academic perspective by reading a lot and whatnot. But, I mean, is
China starting wars? Are they funding? Are they funding a war? Are they sending weapons into Syria? Are they building up? You know, are they fighting wars all around the world? They're not. We are. I don't know. Like, that basic reality seems to be something that like people don't really want to face. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like just like, oh yes, but if they were ever given a chance to do it, they would. So we've got to keep them down. Yeah. I don't see that as legitimate.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
And you know, like the articles are all, you know, some racist caricature of a dragon or something, right? Coiled around the globe or something. It's always couched in threats. Like, what if they could do that? China has the capability to do this, or blah, blah, blah. We have so much footage of the U.S.'s atrocities, like actual footage of shit going down, right? So it's, I mean, kind of have to push back. Like, on the one, we have a known history, and on the other, it's, well, they're gonna. Those are not equal.
I think Syria is considered like the absolute worst place on earth right now in terms of, humanitarian crisis. There's rungs of food, of starvation, basically rungs of starvation, and they're at the step right above the absolute worst situation, which is you're going to starve to death immediately, right? Like there is very little access to. It's the worst spot on earth right now. Who's
Yemen.
there? It's us. We're there.
The Saudis are enforcing, and that to me counts as an actual proven. This is shaping up to be a genocide. Saudi-backed action in Yemen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Biden had ordered airstrikes there within within a month of taking office.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like these are just plain. I think the problem is like with a lot of Americans, like the facts, you just don't care. That the problem isn't the facts aren't known. The facts is you don't care, and so it's easy to excuse this because you play these alternative fantasy, experiments of like, oh yeah, but what if it were the Chinese? It would be 10 times worse. On what basis do you think that? And why would you think the Chinese would even be there? They have no interest in being there, as far as I can tell.
I mean, you go back like far enough in history, you might have a couple reasons, but
I don't think the Chinese ever did any sort of like global imperial shit the way Europeans did.
Definitely not on the same scale, no. But
Not
I
on the
mean,
same
I'm just saying that there are certain countries that may have.
I think the worst country in Asia is Japan. They're the only ones that really tried the
That
European
actually,
model of. They're the only ones that really tried the European model of domination.
Big countries are gonna big country, right? That's the thing, right? Like I don't like actually applying moral judgments on at the level of nation states. I think that's it's a little dangerous, right? So the question can't ever be like, is China a moral state or not, or is the United States a moral state? That's just not how this works. Funnily, if you are actually serious about being nervous about China's growing power and influence, the best counter to that is to advocate for a multipolar world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this framework that there can only just be one winner, that's the wrong one. Like if you actually do want to invest it, because I think it's true. If once a nation gets really big, it will act like an empire, right? And so like we don't even need to talk about, well, is China there yet or not? We kind of just know that this is how this. We don't need to argue about that. We know that this is roughly how powerful nation states will operate once they get big enough.
Right.
If you're actually taking that seriously, though, the answer to that isn't to nuke China. The actual answer is to help foster global prosperity. In my view, at least, you should have a United States that's willing to cooperate. We should be seeing prosperity being fostered at all levels of society across the globe. That, if you're actually serious about China, I don't see how you can avoid like taking that tack. If you're ignoring that, then you're actually just saying let's go to war. I'm just trying to find excuses to start a global war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's gotten out of control. The whole Sinophobia shit has gotten way out of control. It's bothering me a lot actually. How it's just getting worse. I saw Blinken was on 60 Minutes talking about genocide, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, this outrage that it's China. I say this a lot, like when people talk about like markers of prosperity, right? Like when we're talking about like carbon emissions or meat consumption or something. There's something so that brings out just the worst in people when they talk about how well the Chinese people are living. That's the element here. So when we're talking about, and they're trying to launder that as like great power competition talk, and at some level you just have to not fall for it.
What's shocking to me, Adam, is like some of the stuff I've seen that you showed me, like in adoptee forums and stuff, like how quickly some of these like white adoptee or hopeful adoptive parents or something in the future, like how quickly and almost nastily they'll shut down an actual Asian transracial adoptee talking about their experience, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think that again is indicative of a larger white attitude towards Asian people that I didn't want to see, but I am forced now to confront from in every domain, from that domain to the way people are talking about China, to everything in between.
Yeah, I mean,
Which
even like today, there's a I think she's Korean, but there's a Asian American adoptee that I follow on Twitter, and she was, she's a scholar, and she does a lot of, she speaks a lot about adoptee issues. And there was something happened at a high school she went to in Texas that was very racist, and she's talking about how this is damaging and racist and all this stuff. And immediately people, white parents are in her Twitter about how, I have a half Asian daughter, I have an Asian this, I have an Asian that, and they're perfectly okay in this Texas town. And she's like, well, I grew up there. I can tell you firsthand about, the racism. But they don't want to hear it. They're like, well, you don't have a kid, and, how dare you, do that. She'll be fine. Like, how dare you speak for her? I'm like, well, we're just trying to educate you about sort of the realities of your non-white daughter's life, in Texas, in this town, and this adoptee grew up there. She's not just like an adoptee that doesn't know that town. She grew up there.
Yeah,
and it's incredible.
It's the two-faced way that what seems like a very close, loving sort of connection or relationship can turn, or not loving, but these are not people who know each other per se, but like respectful, right? Like, we're on the same side. How quickly that can change when the dynamics are subverted, right? And I'm seeing that everywhere these days with Asian people. And I think the thing is that, and this is the Asian liberal delusion as I see it, is that our most favored minority status, which is kind of it's kind of gone now anyway, which I think is good. But we've gotten used to that, the model minority thing, right? And the thing with the model minority is, and from the way we've talked about it, I think it's a little bit different, is that there's a liberal delusion that comes out of that, which is to say that the sort of inherent respect and favored status and the sort of almost lovingness to it can turn very quickly if you ever choose to subvert that dynamic. Meaning, if you're not playing your part and you don't understand your role, right, you're going to get slapped down real quick, very quick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, there was so Nicole Chung, who I think we had on the pod and we've talked about, and she's probably the highest profile Korean adoptee because of her memoir that came out. Mm-hmm. She actually does the advice column for Slate now, and she's taken time out of her. She's deliberately, I think, chosen letters from adoptive parents, sort of to put a little bit more emphasis on this. And one of the recent letters was about how an adoptive mother feels betrayed because her adoptive daughter, got to know her birth mom. Huh. And immediately from this, like, I thought, and it's all about the adoptive mom and how I thought, this, that, and the other thing, and how dare she do this, and asking this, Nicole Chung, how can I get my daughter to cut off her birth mother again?
Oh,
and this might not seem related, but it's related because it's like, it's that switch. It's that, it's like as soon as you don't do what they want, right? As soon as you're not the way that they expect you to be and toe the line, then the switch flips. They flip it on you, and there are reasons why people think, oh yeah, my non-white child is, or my black adoptee or my Asian adoptee child, they're completely happy. They've never had had problems. It's because they know that if they tell you, you're not going to believe them, and then you're going to blame them. They hear how you talk about China. They hear how you talk about black people, and then they're like, wait a minute, but I'm not white. How, is this how you think about me? I better not say anything to you. And then, that's how you live your life with, an adopted child who's not white, thinking that, oh yeah, there's no racism. Well, they just didn't tell you because you're not safe. You know, they're gonna you're gonna be they're gonna act like you betrayed them.
Yeah, right.
You know.
Yeah, you let them down, or
You let them down. You know.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you
It's
see
crazy.
that in the way like people have to engage on Twitter, right? You will be like, if you say the right thing, you can be they'll put you up as like the model minority, right? Somehow, if you're saying the right thing, you'll be uplifted as like the epitome of American values or something. Like, look at this success story right there. It's when you don't toe the line, and then quickly all of a sudden it's, well, you know, why don't you just go back to China, right? So that this is so it's your presence here is the message is pretty clear. Your presence here is conditional. It's you're here you're our pets, basically. We will like you when you behave. If you don't, then out you go.
Mm-hmm. And with adoption, that's explicit. You know, the way they talk about it, it's explicit.
Yeah, even some of the language is similar, right?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, a straight lift.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is an interesting question. What other ASAM-centered podcasts media does Plan A listen to? Thoughts on Time to Say Goodbye?
People also
Do you
mentioned.
want to go first?
People also mention the Asian's not Asian, and would you have them on even though you don't like them?
Who doesn't like them? I like them.
I don't particularly.
You don't particularly like them.
I don't particularly like them. That doesn't mean I hate them. Okay, I'm not a fan. It doesn't mean I wouldn't talk to them. I think it would be actually really fun to talk to them. I think people that you don't necessarily agree with 100% and are probably funnier than you are great to talk to. But thoughts on Time to Say Goodbye?
I don't know about
We know
Yeah.
Jay Kang.
Hey Jay.
So we think.
Okay.
I think that Jay Kang is one of the best Asian American journalists out there in terms of his approach to how he writes about Asian issues. I think the thing with Jay is that he has a fundamental empathy for Asian people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That he doesn't write about Asian people as objects. He writes about them as subjects.
Yes.
And that comes across in his writing and his willingness to tackle this is what I was saying earlier about how I think in a way, like, we have what would be considered like sort of like right-wing feelings in that sense. I'm not saying they're right-wing, but I'm saying that only right-wing people are allowed to have these feelings. But with a kind of left-wing brain to sort of process how that actually fits into the larger projects out there in society. And I think that Wes Yang, for example, is someone who also has that fundamental empathy for other Asian people, but which in a way isn't tempered by an attempt to sort of like find space for that in left politics. He's more willing to just say, look, left politics is totally corrupt. It's like full of this woke nonsense. There's no space for me. There's no space. Like, if you read his works, which are great, a lot of his writings are great, but it basically says as an Asian man has no space, has no visibility, has no role to play at all among the liberal elite crowd. They don't give a fuck about me. They never will give a fuck about me. They just want me to suck their toes and carry their water. That's it. And
that's very explicit.
Suck their toes. I was thinking about those little fish, not too
Yeah.
explicit.
Yeah.
Not Quentin Tarantino,
Right.
like those little fish.
No, I was going to say. I thought.
And
Like, that's very specific. Did you mention
it is very specific, yeah. Well, we were having conversations about sucking toes earlier. And but I think Wes Yang is someone who has that, what I would say, right-wing feeling, that sort of like empathy across a racial and sometimes a gender line, to say, I as an Asian man have a fundamental empathy for other Asian men, especially in respect to their problems. And I think that is often interpreted as a very right wing kind of thing.
Yeah.
Especially if you're white. Jesus Christ, right? Like if I'm a white guy and I have sympathy for other white men, that's what right wing.
Yeah.
Now, if you're Asian man, that's the closest I think you get on that spectrum to a white man in terms of your right to have an empathy connection to another Asian man, right? And so I think that's what the appeal of a Wes Yang, or why Wes Yang can find purchase more among sort of like dark webby type things, like more anti-ID poll, anti-woke culture. And I think Jay Kang is someone who I think is probably, of all the people that are like legitimate, not us, like, people with jobs in that field.
And book deals and stuff like
and
that.
And book deals, and they're writing in the New York Times and shit. They have a blue check. That he, both, for me, is one of the few people out there that has a fundamental empathy for his fellow Asian person, especially his fellow Asian guy, because he's an Asian guy, right? That's what he's going to understand. And not so quickly surrender that and make a big show of surrendering it and throwing, right-wing Asian chuds, usually in a straw man fashion, throwing them under the bus. Like what he did. What was the one that he did? The thread about how they're just not talking. Like the liberals they're unable to talk about anti-Asian violence whenever it's a non-white perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great thread, and he's pointing out a very real thing.
Kang did, yeah.
Yeah, he's pointing out a very real phenomenon, which is when the attacker is white. Suddenly, the liberals will come out, Asian liberals will come out and quickly denounce the prosecutor for not doing enough, denounce the police for not doing enough. They're letting this guy off the hook. They're not throwing the book at this motherfucker, right? That's their position because he's white. But if the attacker's black, then suddenly it totally changes, and it's like, oh, wait, police are not the answer. Abolition is still like our goal, all this stuff. And I'm like, it's not like I don't get why the liberals are saying this. It's not that difficult to understand what's going on. But I'm saying, like, this is a contradiction. This is a paradox. We can't just pretend that doesn't exist. We need to understand that more. But you're not allowed to talk about it. Mm-hmm. I think Jay at least is out there talking about that, or trying to. But he's right. I don't think the rest of the Asian American blue check crowd is going to it's not just that they won't talk about it, they don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, it's endearing to hear Fumi go through his awakening.
So is the answer that we don't listen to other podcasts?
There's a couple. Let me just pull up. I've been trying to listen to a couple. Let's see.
I listened to my brother's podcast, even though I don't think it would be really characterized as an Asian American centered podcast, but he's Asian American, so I kind of put it in there.
Like Asian Enough. I started following them. Started like Feeling Asian. That's I think that's a I don't think it's a technical spin-off, but it's Brian Park and what's her name? The comedian?
Youngmi Meyer?
They were Youngmi Meyer. Who were frequent guests on Asian Not Asian, and they kind of did their own thing. I mean, it's good light listening. I guess I don't really. So those are just things that are in my rotation. But I think most of the time when I'm listening to podcasts or media these days, it's more like historical. So like trying to learn more about history, or philosophy, or like deep trends. I think it's less important to like I know where I stand on these things. Not necessarily like really confused. So I don't really need to hear a whole bunch of takes on the thing. I would like some longer cuts, some deeper cuts into the whys of the thing. So some of them are Asian American. Like there's a pretty good History of China podcast that's helmed by a team of like Asian American scholars here in the U.S., which is a nice, refreshing change from the usual like litany of like British scholars from Oxford talking about China. So it's stuff like that that's on my roster. I don't know, my listening and viewing habits kind of went all over the place since the whole lockdown situation happened. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I don't really listen to podcasts, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't anymore.
Yeah.
Like I listen to ours, like the ones that I'm not on or something, that's always in the
Yeah.
rotation. But it's hard to like find a time time to like listen to it. Like I do usually when I'm walking my dog or something, but like there isn't really like a commute anymore, and it's hard to put on a hard-hitting podcast while you're working, because then you're kind of like you're neither working nor listening. So it's tough to find that space.
Yeah. I haven't been listening to I don't really listen to other podcasts either. But there maybe one person that's come up pretty often. I don't actually like follow this person. They're on TikTok. It's Dr. Han Ren. I don't know if any of you guys know.
No.
She's a therapist, and she kind of like focuses on like decolonization, and particularly with regards to like child development and psychology. And so she had like one video was shared with me where she talks about like spanking, right, or corporal punishment, and how that is often tied to societies that have been colonized or have dealt with being oppressed one way or another. And that's like it's not a part of the culture. That's generational trauma. Anyway, I appreciate some of her content, and I know that we.
What's it called?
Dr. Han Ren.
That's the name of the podcast?
That's the name of the TikTok handle.
Oh, it's a TikTok account?
Yeah, TikTok account.
Gotcha.
Dr. Han, Han, Ren, Ren. And we've talked about how it's difficult to find mental health specialists who
that's true.
understand
Yeah.
the Asian American experience and don't look at everything through a white lens. I think she's an example of that, so I want to plug her on.
Awesome.
There's always things I've never heard, like Yellow Glitter podcast. I've never heard of this. I'm looking it up on Apple Podcasts. Yeah, there's a lot. Mindfulness through the eyes and soul of a gay Asian. Every episode I share with you is what's on my mind. So this is like he has a guest on and stuff. Yeah, there was someone else shared one with me about, I forgot what it's called, but it was like a guy in Shanghai, like a Chinese American expat in Shanghai. There's like, I don't know, I guess it's so easy to do a pod now. They're just exploding left and right. That's good.
That other one.
That's
All right.
good.
Yeah. Sorry. So let's see. Let's get to this one first. So, given the past podcast series about white-collar work and entrepreneurship, what role do you think passion or meaning should play in the careers of young Asian Americans?
Tough question.
It is a tough question.
Who wants to take a stab at that?
I think this
All of
was
us
something
kinda
that
hate our
you
work.
talked about, Jess, right? With Steve?
Yeah, I'll fall on
Or
the
Philip,
sword
sorry.
for this
Whoop.
one. This question resonates with me because I graduated right ahead of the Great Recession in '08. So I think this is both when the material conditions to get ahead in a quote traditional way started nosediving, while the expectations for said career were skyrocketing. So this was the era of the girl boss, the hustler, the go-getter, right? Who was willing to rise and grind. That was a big motto in those times. So and there was this like mythologizing of work that you should be that you should be doing a shit ton of it. Like if you have a hobby, turn that into a side hustle. And if you have a job, it should have deep meaning. Like I came up in tech when make the world a better place wasn't cliche.
Right. Don't do
so
evil
like-
wasn't sort of laughable.
That one was retired by the time I came on.
Oh, okay.
But this almost like this religious, definitely spiritual kind of quest for meaning and value in your work, with the assumption that if you find that it will also be like magically, you will also be compensated. Like you will be able to achieve them. It's like a win-win, right? Like you're supposed to pour yourself into this hugely meaningful work, and then the universe will reward you with like the blessings of an American, the American dream. Like it was very stark that this was pathological and wrong. So I have a lot of empathy, like really deep empathy for young people who are like in school right now or about to like be like about to head into the workforce, because I think it's an echo of what I went through, and now it's even worse. So passion or meaning, I think you have to it can't come from whoever is signing your paycheck, I think. That's step one. It's not, and I think this gets a little bit misunderstood sometimes. Like I've seen people just go nihilist on this, like just be venal, amoral, just you're in it to work, to get paid, and then you can take that money and I don't know, do something nice with it later, or just go fuck off to Thailand or something. I think that's nihilist, and I don't think that's very satisfactory or nourishing to a person's soul. Like you need to have some motivation that's human to do what you do on a daily basis. So what I'm trying not to cop out here.
What's the bottom line here?
The bottom line I would say is I think there just has to be a reckoning that what you do, you have to do what you do for a living because you want to live, right? You should find work that you enjoy doing as much as possible, while not like completely selling yourself, your soul, basically. I think passion comes outside of that. I think passion does. I don't think work can offer satisfaction for a passion. I mean, so you're going to work. You're going to work because you need to earn a living. There's nothing shameful. There's nothing wrong with that. I think the mythologizing of like entrepreneurship kind of makes people feel a little inadequate if they're not, doing that. But that's not true at all.
So going to the question, what role do you think passion or meaning should play? Jess, would you say that? Are you saying that career that work and the necessity of it is actually an obstacle to passion or meaning, and you've got to find it outside of that? Or
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Even in I think all the the Me Too's and the big reckoning that's been going on in industries in the last handful of years kind of shows this. A lot of these companies will lure in people with that message of satisfying passion, because I think people understand. Especially young people, idealistic and their heart's in the right place. They want to be pouring their work into a thing that is meaningful and, quote, makes the world a better place. And then we're seeing time and time again how people are abused and manipulated by that sentiment. So it's not to say that all work is corrupt and terrible and bullshit, even though most of what you do on a day-to-day basis absolutely will be. It's more that just be protective of yourself. Like, don't let yourself be abused and manipulated because you want to believe in what this company is selling to you. So in that sense, I guess just a little bit more distance between you and what you do for a living is important.
This is a particularly good question for Jong, because Jong, you've had the most diverse transition, or you've had the biggest transition from sort of like blue collar life now to being like, a software guy. What's your take on this now that you've been doing the software, the developer thing for a while now?
I think.
And what was your first job? What were you before?
I don't know all of your work histories, but definitely as far as post college, mine may be probably one of the more diverse. My first job out of college was in clinical research, as a clinical research coordinator on conducting Alzheimer's studies, some Parkinson's studies, and depression studies, pharmaceutical trials. And then I started a small business with a friend of mine, and we ran that for about a year, and then we parted ways. And then I entered the live entertainment industry, working as first in the warehouse, and then a few months later, I became what was my title? I don't know. I was basically a manager though, and Anyway, I think there's two things, right? One, if you're asking yourself like what role does passion or meaning have, like you're already making a couple assumptions, which is like you're not fighting for survival, you've got your basic needs met and you have that room to think. Because if your back is against the wall, it doesn't fucking matter. You find the best paying job you can get and you dig yourself out of the hole or whatever, you get yourself into a position where
Yeah, but are you missing out? Like, is that person suffering from missing out on the joys of having a job that does satisfy your passion and your?
Yeah, I think there's
You know?
there's a difference between like, oh, I can't afford a house yet, or I can't afford that car yet, versus like, I don't know if I'm gonna have food on my table at the end of the week, right? Like, first, let's get that out of the way, okay? To a young Asian American, if you are in that position, fuck passion, fuck meeting, go get that money, put food on the table, make sure you're secure first, and then you can think about those things. Aside from
Yeah.
that, like once we've covered that kind of base case, for me, one of the things that's always been a question is like, do I find this job interesting? Do I think I'll have fun? And I don't mean fun like clinical research. It's like it was actually a very depressing job. I was meeting people who were terminally ill and faced with that reality every single day. Every day they came in, they're confronted with that reality. It was emotionally very difficult, you know? So it wasn't fun in that sense, but I found it interesting to get an insight into what pharmaceutical research is like, you know? And I got to like take my patients to go get MRIs and like see what the inside of a hospital works like, even though I'm not a medical student. Starting my own small business, you know, that was a whole experience in and of itself. I wore so many hats. Probably my most lengthiest like salesperson gig ever. And then working in entertainment and all those things was again a completely different experience. And like there were some really shitty positions I was put into, but I had so much fun. Like I never thought that I'd be driving, you know, like 10K forklifts and like, you know, bringing myself up like 100 feet in the air on a boom lift, you know, to install some shit. Like who
That's
knew?
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and then with engineering too. I mean, engineering is great because it's an incredibly privileged position in society. So like, you know, I'm not gonna lie, it's been great for that. But it's also fun and it's incredibly empowering in my opinion because in today's like technological climate, it's like being literate, you know? It's like knowing
Yeah.
how to read and write. It gives me access to do things that
Yeah,
I wouldn't
totally.
be able to otherwise.
I think one of the
Young
problems-
Asian Americans, I think one of the big things is dial down your expectations on how well things pay. I keep hearing that from a lot of younger people, but when like if you like I saw a crazy survey, computer science new graduates were asked what they thought a senior level engineer, someone who's like maybe like 5 to 10 years ahead of them on a career track made, and it was like it was absurd. Like they were like they were off by like almost a factor of 5 at the
How much
Wow.
did they think the pay was?
it was like $500,000.
Oof.
Wow. I mean, with RSUs and all that, TC could
Yeah.
get that high. But
I mean, that's
Well,
not
I
to
mean,
say
there's
that
there's
doesn't
like
Some
very
comment.
not
senior.
exist.
Aren't there
There are.
places where very senior or very specialized people
That's
can
not
make.
the average, right?
But it's similar to how people overestimate how well paid like law is or medicine.
Sure.
Similar to that,
Yeah.
and we've seen how those salaries have definitely taken a hit within our generations. So I think there's just this like kind of mythology and still self-perpetuate too from inside the industry to prop up this value. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on about that. That's not like the end all be all, but I think it's like having realistic expectations for what like real life goes a long way.
Well, the pay for
Yeah.
law and medicine is pretty transparent. I think it's taken a hit in the sense that things are just getting more expensive, and the comp's not rising as fast as home prices in your area, or you know. But And the other thing is that the misery index is probably worse than it was before too.
Yeah, for
I
those
know with work from
professions,
home,
yeah.
like a lot of lawyers in big law are burning the fuck out, and it's pretty bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would,
What-
and I would say, I mean, yeah, I mean, you just have to know what, like, if you want to make money, I think my advice is, a lot of advice is you got to figure it out for yourself. What do you want? But sometimes the
What you
useful
wanna
advice is
put up
what
with.
you want. You know, like, well, what did you want? You know, and I think
Yeah.
if I could go back, one thing I would do in my prime, you know, or not in my prime, but I guess in my early earning years, is recognize the value of saving and investing early.
Okay, but we're not.
And
talking
I cannot
about-
stress that enough, that the last thing you want to do is to work in order to sustain a lifestyle that you think you owe yourself in your youth, and that you want to live it up, and you want to have a bang in you, because I think it's a YOLO culture where it's like, oh, I'll only enjoy you know, getting bottle service with my friends, or blowing it on a fancy car, or going on these fancy vacations, or living in a dope fucking pad in the middle of the city. I'm not going to enjoy that if I'm, you know, an old crusty man, or a woman past my prime, my dating years, and I've got to go live it up now. I think that's a real trap. And
Yeah.
almost every older person I know
Yeah.
is like, what the fuck are you doing? Don't do that.
Yeah, that's all good advice. But like the point is like passion and meaning, right? We're not talking comp. But like, by the way, just to clarify, when I said incredibly privileged, like yes, I am talking comp is a part of it, but I meant more like how people treat me and see me differently compared to when I was working with my hands out in the field. You know, like if by field I mean like in the field, not actual like crops. But it is very different. You know, it's stark how people.
I think one of the back to the issue of passion and meaning. I think I've noticed this. One of the issues is that as just like a regular person who we all have our passions, right? Like, I don't know, maybe you love gaming, or maybe you love shopping, or maybe you love reading, or maybe you love history, or, you know, you love music,
Yeah.
you love sports, whatever it is. There's something you love, right? Your interaction with that passion is going to be through people who do it professionally. So if you're like a huge soccer nut, you're going to be watching professional soccer players. If you love reading, you're going to be reading books by professional authors. If you love video games, you're going to be looking at products of work, of professional creation. You know, people don't really consume a lot of stuff that people produce on the side, right? The best stuff is all produced professionally.
Not always true.
I think the professionally produced stuff has a huge edge over the stuff that's quote produced on the side.
Well,
I'd
I'd agree
but I
with
don't-
that, but I think that there are a lot more people who produce stuff on the side that are very good at making it look professional, like very well produced.
No. My
but they're
point is that you, as a consumer of it, not as a producer of it, most likely you're going to be following,
Yeah.
you know, or
Oh,
getting
yeah, yes.
getting your fix from professionally produced things, like professional
Yes.
music, professional musicians, professional video game,
Right,
you know,
right.
developers.
Gone are the days of people who are just in their bedrooms making tons of money with silly YouTube videos, or
I
like
mean,
on
that's
Twitch
assuming-
that don't, you know, like all the most popular Twitch streamers. They're pretty professionally produced. Like they're not just sitting in there.
Yeah, and I guess my point is to say that regular ass people, vast majority of people are just regular ass people who have to do a regular ass job that ain't got nothing to do with their passion and meanings. Okay, and some people get paid more for it, some people get paid less, but at the end of the day, you're grinding it out at work. That's the reality for most people. And I think because in our off time, when we do want to indulge ourselves in something that we actually do give a fuck about, we're watching other people do it professionally. And I think that creates this thing where it's like an envy for people who get to spend all their lives, their working lives in the world that you have to carve out time to be a part of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I think that sets up a lot of envy for people who we think spend all day doing the things that we don't get paid to do, but we'll do anyway. I think that's kind of an illusion, right? I think like the reality is that producing, like, say, a video for people who love gaming, like, gaming is one of the worst industries to work in. For people who love fashion, fashion is one of the most abusive fucking industries to work in.
It's awful.
Sure,
If people who love film, movies, Hollywood is one of the most abusive, disgusting, horrible places to work. If you love music, music is one of the hardest,
God, yeah.
most unforgiving. I mean, John, you've probably seen this up close for yourself, but it's not
Seemingly random.
fucking easy, is it? So I think that in a weird way, it's like probably the more you really fucking love something, the further away from making it a professional thing that, you know, like going to find a job adjacent to that thing is probably not the way to go about it.
Yeah, I think maybe if I had to sum up my answer is don't look for your passion or meaning in your job.
Right,
Like,
right,
if you
right.
find it
Yeah.
great. But I would say, like, hey, it's successful if you enjoyed it and you liked your coworkers and you were able to make a living from it. Like, that's a success.
You know, I think a lot of times, not all, but if you really dig deep into the question, like, what am I passionate about, or what do I like? I think it's important to separate the work stuff out from the lifestyle that you think such a work life will net you. And I think this goes to what you're saying, Teen. Like, it gets intermeshed quite a bit, so sometimes it's hard to tell
for sure.
where that line is.
That's a good point.
But it's kind of helpful to kind of work backwards. Like, you definitely, if there is a particular lifestyle that you want, you can kind of there's not a ton of options. Once you can start narrowing it down that way. I feel pretty lucky. Like, when I was a freshman, I had like the most nihilistic, jaded senior to help me out to pick a major, and he said, "Don't ever major in something you love.
Yeah.
Major in the thing that's like that is most useful to you."
Yeah.
And that was like excellent advice.
I'll pat myself on the back that I did that. I was like, what could be useful?
All of
And I
this
chose
doesn't
that.
apply if you're rich. If you're born rich,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you're born rich,
and
then what does it
you
matter?
can do whatever the fuck you want,
Yeah.
then you can make it your thing. But
See,
Yeah.
Come on, Doge.
Jess,
Come
I
on.
didn't
Why do you
take
think we're
that
all, like,
advice.
degenerate crypto gamblers right now?
But sorry, just
What
this
did you
was up
major
here,
in,
and
John?
people want to.
Yeah, okay, so that sounds-
So did
so-
you major in CS or did you take a boot camp?
I took a boot camp. I majored
you
in
go.
psychology.
I think that's actually a good
terrible
combination.
choice.
I think that's a
That's a
good
terrible-
combination. It probably didn't seem like a good a good choice when it happened, but I think where you ended up, I think it's actually good that you have a psychology background.
So the
I think
advice
it's
I
helpful.
followed.
No.
The advice, yes. The advice I followed was pick something you enjoy, because at the end of that, like, you know, then you'll have a good time. You like in your classes, and you'll like enjoy the material. And as
Sure.
a consequence of enjoying the material, you'll do well. So I was interested in psychology. I was interested in like understanding why do people think the way that we do and things like that. And then I was interested in getting into human factors. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the field of human factors. It's like ergonomics, but for psychology.
Okay.
So how do we design things to work with the human mind, how we see the world, how we interact with
Intuitively,
things.
yeah, seamlessly,
Yes.
yeah.
That seems to fit right into software development. I don't know.
Yeah, sort of. If I'm allowed to have
If
some
you're
input
allowed
on
to.
on how how the UI is
Yeah.
designed, or what the user flow is going to be like, sure, maybe, you know. But most
I'm being
companies have
idealistic, I
designers
think.
for all that. Yeah, usually they hand me a mock-up and they're like, "Here, build this." Oh wait,
Oh,
you didn't build
gosh.
it exactly how we wanted it in our brain, but you were supposed to know that.
Yeah.
So I took a boot camp.
Solidarity, John.
Yeah, solidarity,
I
man.
have been-
I took a boot camp. I talk about it, I think, in an older podcast, one of the tech podcasts we did. So I'm gonna plug that.
Yeah.
Although I'll have to go look for a link. But I took a boot camp, and it worked out great for me. Obviously, there's survivor bias, and
Yeah.
so take that with a grain of salt. But so far, I've been very thankful that the career transition has gone well, and yeah, there's a lot of people who've gone through boot camps and are having great careers.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, but don't do it if you hate it.
Yeah, I picked my career working backwards. I thought I wanted to go into medicine. I was like, I really like working from home. I really like being in control of my work hours. You can't exactly do medicine remotely.
Yeah.
So that really did
Yeah.
like narrow stuff down quite a bit. I enjoy what I do. I have found a lot of meaning. I am passionate about many of the things in it. But that was a matter of trial and error.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Now's a good time. Adam? Can you put that picture I linked, the scary one of the
Oh man.
wireframe
all right.
monkey?
Okay.
I'm gonna draw an analogy here
Jesus.
because funny thing, someone brought user interface, and the image I found actually in a blog post about designing user interfaces.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let me find this incredibly disturbing image.
It's just a link in the private chat. Yeah.
I got it.
But anyway, yeah. So, like this image, there's another one where you can see the other monkey. So there's two monkeys, fake monkeys. There's a wireframe monkey, and then there's another monkey that has
Got like a blanket around it.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find that.
Yeah, it's a famous study.
It's a famous study. Yeah,
is.
you know all about these studies, don't you?
I probably
Psychology major.
That's what I do. It was demonstrating how important like the physical presence of a mother is.
Which,
Okay, yeah.
That
I don't know if that one comes through.
Everyone recognizes that, other than when it comes to adoptees. People are like, because adoptees are about, trying to raise awareness about how it's, adoption, it can be traumatic, especially if like they're infants. There's stories that I hear of like, adoptions that are agreed upon before people are even born, and they're not even allowed to be held by their mother once.
Wow.
So then people will come up to you and say, "Oh, that doesn't matter. That physical attachment, that bonding doesn't matter." But we demonstrated it with goddamn monkeys. Okay.
Yeah, show that the one I just posted, the science20.com one. That shows both monkeys. I don't know why so this may go nowhere, but I've been thinking about this image constantly. And
I'm coming with
yeah,
Give me
sure.
a second.
But the idea, so the experiment was this. The experiment was this little monkey baby is given a choice between, there it is. It's given a choice between the mother on the left and the mother on the right. Now, if you see the mother on the right is just fucking chicken wire and nothing. But
Right.
it has a milk bottle right where the monkey boobs are, right? The one on the left has carpeting and a nice kind of monkey-looking face. But
That's horrific looking, but okay.
But well, relative, it's less it's more monkey-looking than the right one. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
That's for sure.
But it has nothing. It doesn't have any milk. But the monkey will prefer to cuddle up with the milkless mother that has the furry body and the monkey-like face versus the T500 over here. Like the thing with the
T5.
Yeah, with the thing. And so to me, I think in a way, a lot of I'm
telling you.
I'm not talking about actual parents. I'm talking about employment here.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say
Let's
is
bring this around to employment here.
yeah. What I'm saying is there was an article in the New York Times called "I Will Never Fall in Love with My Employer Again."
Oh, that's right.
You remember
yeah.
that one?
I have that.
And it was by this young woman who was, very, by all accounts, very gifted, coder, and she was working in at Google, and she was sold on Google as being this monkey, this thing with the fucking carpet on it, in the sense that she was expected to find family and friends and a social life and the complete life from her employer, Google, which is why they give you, the cafeteria and the concierge service and the ping pong tables and the pool balls and all that shit. It's like a young adult daycare, And after a
Yeah.
pretty shit experience that involved years of suffering sexual harassment from her manager and Google not doing anything about it, and her being basically like unceremoniously fired, she said, "Never again. I'm not gonna fall for this again. I'm not. The next job that I have, which she got plenty of offers. She's ex Google. She's she got another job, no problem." But she's like, I don't feel the same way. I'm not looking to make friends there. I'm not looking to, I'm not going to spend so much time going to these company outings. I don't invest myself into this company where I'm like, I bleed for this company. I breathe for this company. My passion's in this company. She's like, no, fuck that. It's work. It's a salary. They need me to do something. I show up, I do it. That's the real relationship that I have with this company. And when I look at these fucking wireframe monkeys, I'm like, this is what corporations are doing to people. They are pretending to care about you. They're pretending to provide, whatever. But they're just simulacra of that. What you should be comfortable with is the reality that under both of these, they're both fucking wire cages. The difference is that one just has the milk just right
so
there.
So you're
for you.
saying that monkey should have just jumped into the researcher's face and clawed his eyes out?
Yeah, exactly.
Neither one of these is a fucking monkey.
Yeah,
right.
Take the milk. Yank it out of
milk,
the wireframe and just suck on it in the corner by yourself,
Basically.
And then give COVID to the researcher that did this to you.
This is
Weird
a good
analogy,
article.
but I
you guys
get
should
it.
read it. It's a good
Tortured
article.
analogy. I'm sorry, but I've been thinking about this image endlessly because I feel like that's what they're doing to us. They have things to make it seem like like the CIA with his like fucking woke recruitment video or whatever. They're trying to put skin on the Terminator so it doesn't intimidate and scare you as much, and so you will be more easily assimilated into and I think that's the saddest thing, isn't it, to see that monkey looking for comfort from that. That's terrible. But that's people trying to find meaning in their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel.
This isn't a new thing. I think this is we're actually going
new.
back to a healthier, older model, probably around like the 60s and 70s, 80s, and started petering out in like the 90s onward. There definitely was a time when work was 9 to 5. You leave work at work, and work was to fund your real life. I think ironically that was probably the era of the most employee loyalty to your company, and also probably the healthiest work-life balance achieved so far in the modern post-industrial world.
How does that?
Reason for that.
How does that tie into the fact though that a lot of those companies at that time had pension funds? Like they were taking care of their employees, sort of cradle to grave.
There's a huge debt owed to the work of to unions. Strong regulatory agencies, a firm hand on cost of living, where like a middle class, like the government was explicit in controlling the cost, so tied to like 1 or 2 years of an average worker's salary for that area. That's the benefit that comes from that, and we slowly see that dismantled, and then the only thing left to kind of lure us in is this whole work is life, life is work, come find your family at work, and we're going to exploit your your very real human desire for connection, meaning, to do good work, and use that to exploit you. We're going to pay you less than you deserve. We're going to work you harder than you should be worked. You have no ownership stake for the most part in these companies that you're going to be working at, and this is going to come at the expense of being able to foster connections outside work as well. So the question, like passion is very real. It's human to want that. It just has to come from outside that this work relationship that we have.
Yeah. I don't think any of us are saying don't have passion. I mean, it's almost impossible to kill that. Like, you're gonna have passion for something, right? It's and the very disturbing monkey experiment pictures. That's basically that's natural, right? It's natural to want that connection and to want that. It's just that in this current sort of climate, which is a bad one, sort of an unnatural one, you're going to be exploited even worse than you probably are already if you fall into that passion trap and that meaning trap. And I'll just echo.
I think it used to be
Yeah.
people understood work was work. And when salary, when salary work appeared, when wage work first appeared, people thought of it as awful. They were like, "This is awful. You're just going to I'm going to spend 8 hours of the day working for fucking you for a wage." But okay, but it normalized over time to where it seems normal that we would just surrender this much of our life over to an employer. Okay, so that's the reality. That's what you're going to have to do. Yes, it sucks, but but they try to pad it to make it seem not only is that acceptable, but that's desirable. That's how you find meaning in life.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a very new phenomenon because even when I was younger, that wasn't how it was. People knew 9 to 5 was a grind. It was a joke. Like people were always like, Dolly Parton singing working 9 to 5. That's everyone knew. Like work sucked. There wasn't an issue. People lived with that fact and they were okay with that. And I think they were happier for that fact.
Sometimes it is more
And
fun.
this is
I'll
the
be
era
honest.
of the grand public works, right? We landed. We were in the space race. This was the era of massive infrastructure development. That actually was a time of great. I think people did find a lot of pride and meaning in the social landscape that they found themselves part of. You were definitely more connected to all the aspects of that. So it's not really a trade-off, I think. You're not trading, shit, like, it's getting so threadbare. Like, companies saying, like, we want to be your family. We want to do good work that changes the world. And it's like, what do you, you're an ad farm. You're an ad farm.
Right.
I think the real killer here was with the professionalization of leisure, right? Is like when we did want to unwind and we weren't working, instead of doing that in a way that was just direct with your family or direct with
Your neighbors,
or whatever, you would outsource leisure to more companies. To
Disney.
Yeah, exactly, right.
It's like,
Disney or to.
And this is a loop, right? You're tired, you're exhausted, you're not able to cultivate a hobby or interests outside of that. Your only outlet is to just spend some of this money you spent so much of yourself earning. So, you sit on the couch and like, I don't know, flip open Amazon or some shit.
Yeah, and so I think the outsourcing of your leisure to corporations, to capitalist production providing leisure now, I think kind of put the tail in the mouth together, because now it's like you're human centipeding yourself, bro, because now you're confusing the world. Like, I am getting my entertainment from someone who does this for a living. And that starts to make you start to... You're not understanding the separation of meaning and identity and life from work. Because someone else's work is to provide you that.
I mean, that was always the case when you had mass, if you've had mass entertainment, right? I mean, you always have
yes, and I think, but
entertainers.
the more mass entertainment became all encompassing.
Yeah, I
where
think
now
it's
a video, you don't just go to spend 2 hours to watch a movie once, maybe every 2 weeks. You're binging Netflix series, every day. Or it's not just, images on a dark screen or on a tiny TV. It's an immersive 3D VR world, this kind of thing.
Okay,
and
so... Sorry. Go ahead and finish your point, but I want to jump in.
No, jump in. I'm just saying the same shit over and over.
So...
You're gonna have the last word here, John. We're coming up in 2 hours.
All right, okay, I'll make it quick. So basically, then, like, where does Kentaro, the sweet tooth salaryman, fit into this? Okay, because I had a couple thoughts. One is like, okay, that guy, right? Like, we've talked a lot about.
Did you watch it?
I did.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And finding meaning outside of your work, and like your work is work, right? And that's what he does, right? He's finding his meaning in like finding the best suites and like exploring them to the utmost, whatever. But then on the other hand, right, like, so that's where I was going with that, right? It's like, okay, are you maybe advocating that young Asian Americans should be like Kentaro and find something outside of work that drives them to excel in their career, which also touches on the whole like libidinal ladder thing. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But now we're talking about like, okay, well then it kind of becomes full circle when you start consuming something that somebody else is doing full time to make a living. Well, that's what Kantaro is also doing. He's not making the sweets himself. He's going to a restaurant or some other service-oriented business, and that person serving him is earning their living.
Here's the difference.
How's that fit?
Okay, so I think the thing with Kantaro, it's not just that he is... I don't know, if people don't know this, we did a bonus pod where I was telling... There's a Netflix show called Kantaro, the Sweet Tooth Salaryman, which is based on a manga, a Japanese manga, which I think has very interesting things to say about white-collar work, especially given it's Japan. And Japan has had... You know, Japan culturally seems to be in our future. Like, we're heading always towards them, and I feel like they have kind of... Kantaro was a thing where they broke the code a little bit on white-collar work and motivation in a way that Americans have not, but we can learn from it a little bit. But it wasn't just that he was finding meaning doing his desserts blog outside of work. It was that he had specifically set up work as a sort of like thing from which he stole time to go eat his desserts. Like, in order for him to do his blog, he had to have this job. Because the job brought him to all these different neighborhoods in Tokyo, and you know, and not only that, but it reinforced his job because he, in order to steal time, he had to be doubly as efficient as the next guy.
So he was using the job.
He was intertwined the job in a way where it would pay off in the form of access to his real passion. I'm not saying, I'm not advocating that's how it. I'm not saying that there's anything to learn. I'm just saying it was a very interesting way where, because I think I have seen people do this at work where they have found a way to intertwine these periodic payoffs with work in terms of whether it's taking a vacation or whatever it is. And
that totally makes sense.
Yeah, I was actually referring to, I think, because in Kantaro's case, it's a giant euphemism for a guy who is a sex addict, basically.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's made explicit. I think. I don't think that's controversial.
Other than that,
have you seen The Naked Director?
Yeah.
Yeah. So similar vein. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but with what you're saying, Teen, about how he sort of uses his job to like enable or to even to make it easier for him to even get to his true passion. There was a woman I worked with at City, who she always seemed to be traveling like every other day or every weekend she would go somewhere. It wasn't just like a drive away. Like she'd be taking plane rides across the country or around the world.
I knew.
And we're like, how does this happen? Like, how was she doing this? And I think she was somehow working the job and she was being paid enough money and it was just what she wanted to do. But when you were explaining that, I'm like, yeah, she must have been doing something to like massage the job or to work the job to allow her to do that. Because there are people who do it. I don't think that's like advice you can give to like most people to like do that, but
I don't think it's good advice. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that Kantaro to me was a very good show in terms of showing the difficulties of maintaining motivation in a white collar world. And how they hacked it. Do you remember there was that episode, Jung, where like he had a guy, I think he might have been a trainee, and he was like a failed baseball player. His passion was baseball, and he got caught. Remember, he would go to the park and just like swing his bat to work on his swing form?
By the riverside.
Yeah, and he got caught by Kantaro.
Yeah.
And they had this really interesting conversation where Kantaro actually didn't get him in trouble and was like, you have to find something like this to keep going. Like, you have to find a way to steal time. And if it's going to go down to the river to practice your bat, to keep alive your baseball fantasy or whatever. And that's what motivates you to get out of the office and, hit up all your sales points so that you can find your way down by the park to work on your form. And that's what you do.
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting.
And then he was like, but you fuck up my time.
Exactly. Don't fuck up my time. That's how I... Yeah.
There's the real aspect there.
To have a slightly antagonistic relationship to your work.
Yes.
I think that little play. I think there's a lot of expectation and coercion that goes into it. Like everyone knows what. Like if We all know the workday is 9 to 5, but if you stick to that 9 to 5, you know they're going to look at you a certain way, like you're not loyal or something. I just think it's helpful to have the mindset like, no, you're here to do a job. That relationship is inherently antagonistic to some degree, and to not allow bad behavior manipulate you past what you're willing to provide in exchange for what you're given.
Well, one thing I was going to say about working in entertainment, it was actually one of the most fun jobs I've ever had, fun careers. It was some of the people I worked with were lots of fun to deal with, but I think one of the factors was that it being such a cutthroat industry, it was very clear that like they're not our family. We're lucky to get this gig. There's no promise of a gig after tonight, right? Like you get exactly these hours, and even those hours you have to count because they might not count it right, you know? But that gave us a lot of freedom to just be like, nope, I'm on my lunch break. Fuck off.
That's the worst boss, is the one that wants to be your fucking friend. That's the absolute worst boss. The one that
I actually had a really good boss that wanted to be my friend, and we are friends. But yeah, I mean, I
In
get
general,
what you're saying.
though, it's
No, I mean in the sense of like, well, if he's on your side, fine. Because if he's like, if he's basically like also a working guy, but he's like your shift manager kind of guy, okay, fine. You're on the same side. But he's one up on the org chart. But I'm saying someone who is like the employer and you are the employee, and this person wants to invade your fucking space, just like in Kantara, like his boss wants them to go out to sing karaoke and shit and rah the company culture.
Japanese
and
Korean work culture, though, right? Like,
yeah, see, it's that's the thing about Asian work culture that I'm not so sure I'd be down with. Is you've got to really drink the Kool-Aid on a lot of that shit sometimes. I don't know. At least lately, especially when I moved to white collar.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be a lot of fun. You know, it's very clear what the expectations are, and like we don't have to like you just beyond as far as this not being an emergency. Literally, it's like that's not my job though. I get paid for exactly what they pay me for. Nothing more, nothing less.
I actually, no joke, at my last job, we would go out because one of like the global heads of this or that would come around to the different offices, and when he came to New York, we would all go out to take him out for karaoke. And I don't know how this actually came about, but we actually all started singing You Raise Me Up. What is that song? What's that song? You Raise Me Up.
A song called You Raise Me Up, yeah.
That's a song.
I forgot the name of that song.
Josh Groban, right?
Yeah, Josh Groban. We were singing that song to him. I could not fucking believe, and not ironically, like it was barely ironic. It was weird. I was like, "This is fucking sick. This is sick." And it was
and
like
there was no camera on that. I mean, that's like that.
And it was
be a movie.
Thursday. It was like 11:30, and I was drunk and far from home, and I was like singing to this boss.
Was it in K-Town?
It was no, it was in Midtown, but it was a Korean. But it was a Korean
karaoke
spot.
bar, right?
Yeah. Horrifying. Absolutely.
Okay. That is the one. That is one of that's on top of my list. I think of things I miss doing.
You Raised Me Up, Josh Groban. That's the one.
But
my god.
Going to karaoke is on top of my list of things I miss not doing because
with
of the
friends,
pandemic.
not with coworkers. Fuck
Yeah. Oh
that.
no, with friends. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I miss that a lot. So.
All right.
So thanks everyone for being on. Sorry that Jess that you had a little trouble there popping you in and out. John, really great
Did I miss
seeing
any
you.
good questions?
It was. I was in IATSE briefly. Yes. Somebody asked the question.
Yeah. So and
Is
then,
that like a union or something, or?
Yeah.
What's it stand for?
International Association of Theatrical Stage something. You know what?
Stage employees or something?
No, it's not employees.
Engineers?
It is stage employees. You're right.
Stage
International
employees.
Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. Yeah.
Cool.
Local 16.
And then I know that there's been a lot of interest in our Patreon for UFOs. So we are going to be doing one on UFOs tomorrow, Teen, Jess, and I.
Big believers.
We want to believe. We do believe.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a fun one.
We know the truth. Yeah.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a longer question that someone posed. I didn't even have time to like read it or comprehend it. But I just want to we know.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we'll probably. No, I don't think we have the space to talk about it right
Okay.
now. I just wanted we heard it. I want to read it. I want to give it some thought, and then we'll talk about it in the Discord.
Sounds good.
We're not talking
All right.
about them aliens right now.
We will not right now. CS, patience, my man, patience.
Patience.
The truth is, we out here.
That is we'll share that meme too. That is a hilarious meme.
The truth is, we out here.
All right. Yeah, and Chris didn't show up, but that's okay. He'll be on next week.
Yeah.
And we actually had an idea that maybe
I think that just means his date went well and he didn't call. He hasn't come.
But
Chris getting laid. He's busy. He's too busy for this shit.
He's getting busy. He's
Yeah.
busy getting busy. So yeah. And then we're actually going to try to get a guest on for on a regular basis on these live streams. So look out for that. All right. But thanks everyone.
All right. See y'all.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.